Welcome to the Real Estate Brief. I'm Adam, and today we're going to be cutting through a lot of the noise that we find inside of the headlines. We're going to find the truth that we can see inside the news, even though there's a lot of noise in the news. What I truly believe, if we look at the data, we will find some opportunity in there to help you grow your real estate business and navigate a shifting market. All right, so I'm going to give you some of my observations as well and some action items for you guys to take from each of these articles and where I believe you can absolutely find that opportunity. So if you're ready to gain your real estate edge, let's dive into our very first story. And like I said, this story is about the bipartisan housing bill, which just passed the House of Representatives. So this is going to be the featured article for today. So they just kind of passed this, and it's quite a massive bipartisan housing package that they've kind of put together. And this is bipartisan because it was represented by both a Republican and a Democrat that helped pass it through the House of Representatives. So the main focus of this bill is increasing supply and affordability in the housing sectors, right? So now this article that we're going to be kind of deciphering does kind of, signify, relief is coming type of idea. But we also have to realize that policies and things like this take a lot of time. And I've been talking about this almost every single day for the past few weeks, that the way you truly fix an economy is not by one big magic pill or silver bullet that just all of a sudden changes everything around in one moment. Matter of fact, that's a little bit of a risky way to address an economy that has a point of tension in it. It's typically micro changes that bring results over time that then creates a consistency in the market that builds confidence. And that's what we're looking at. So this housing bill is trying to address some of the old regulations and things like that have been in place for, quite honestly, I read an article yesterday, it's like since 97. So a lot of this has not been revisited since 97. So there's a lot there. So as we break this down though, feel free to throw in the comments questions, thoughts, opinions, whatever, engage with me. Let's talk through this and see if we can get to some understanding about what might be coming in our real estate market in regards to this bipartisan housing bill that was just passed, okay? So let's get into this first article now. All right, like I said, this article here, this is by the National Association of Realtors, so you can find this at nar.realtor. And so just so you know, in the YouTube description, every single article that I discuss on this live stream is posted there. So if you want to go back and read it and then pull out information that you can use in your own marketing and videos or whatever, you can do that. I've tried to make them accessibly available to you guys. And I've said this before, is you can take the recording of this live stream, you can go into any kind of AI model, drop the YouTube URL in there, and tell the AI to give you tangible takeaways from this live stream and pull out things that you can use. And then you can tailor AI to then tell you different ways you build social media out of the information that we're talking about here. So there's different ways you can use information like this. So just keep that in mind, that what I talk about here can be used to create more content for you. So feel free to do so. I think that's a very helpful thing. It's what we're looking to do. So, all right, let's look at this article here. This right here is just by NAR Realtor News, by Michael Ruber. Is the author of this article, and he's going to briefly just kind of touch on this a little bit, and I'll kind of elaborate on some of the changes that are coming. But like I said earlier, I'm not going to be going into too much depth just yet. There's way too much in this bill to do that here. Not enough time. It would be very boring. But what I plan on doing is taking each core tenet inside of this bill, especially as it progresses into Congress. And if it does end up passing, that's where I'm going to be doing a much deeper breakdown about what these changes actually mean. That's where we're going to spend a little bit more time deciphering what this truly means for the housing market is once it passes Congress. So we're going to go do a brief overview of this and then go from there. All right. Here we are. The Housing for the 21st Century Act aims to make a significant dent in the nation's housing shortage through a comprehensive approach that addresses barriers at all levels of government. And this is what they're trying to do. They are trying to hit every single sector that they possibly can in the housing industry. And it is a heavy bill that addresses many different categories of the affordability. We're talking about affordability gap in housing in regards to different demographics, like your millennials that tend to be the most difficult to buy because they kind of got caught in that, inflation phase, and they didn't have the cash on hand to then be able to buy at the high inflation. So they didn't have the income. So This housing bill addresses that. It talks about trying to build and create incentives to help people be able, and builders to build more homes. So all of those things are being addressed inside of this bill. All right. It says the Housing for the 21st Century Act, a bipartisan housing package aimed at boosting supply and improving affordability, passed in the House of Representatives by a vote 390-9. And this is to note, this is why they're saying a bipartisan bill. Okay. Overwhelmingly, it passed. All right. With House approval secured, the legislation now moves to the Senate for consideration. I kept saying Congress, but Senate. The legislation was introduced by House Financial Service Committee Chairman French Hill, Republican Arkansas, Ranking Member Maxine Waters, Democrat of California, Housing and Insurance Subcommittee Chair Mike Flood, and Ranking Member Emmanuel Clever. In December 2025, the full committee passed this legislation by a vote of 50-1. So again, overwhelmingly, both parties are agreeing that we need to address the housing supply shortage and the housing industry as a whole. I think this is great, right? We do have a problem here. They are acknowledging that, and they're trying to figure out ways to do that. And this bill has a lot of benefits in it to help us navigate that. So, all right, the National Association of Realtors applauds the House for passing the House for the 21st Century Act, a meaningful and bipartisan step toward addressing America's housing affordability crisis. With the nation facing a shortage of roughly 5 million homes and first-time buyers now entering the market at a median age of 40, bold action to expand supply and remove barriers to home ownership has never been more urgent, says Shannon McGann, NAR Executive Vice President and Chief Advocacy Officer. Here's the thing. If you go back, and you can do this, if you go to my YouTube channel and go back and watch yesterday's live stream, I actually talked about an interview that the NAR CEO did at the Inman Conference in New York just last week. And that in that interview, NAR is getting back to understanding their roots and what they're really ultimately there for, right? What they exist for. That's their members. That's the association members, realtors. They're there for real estate agents that are members of the association to help support them. The other thing that they're doing, and they do it very well, and they have for many years, through RPAC, they do a lot of lobbying for housing relief and housing benefits, not just for realtors, but for consumers in general. And they have helped pass a lot of legislation. We'll get onto this, but they are very active in bringing these housing issues to the governments in their states, in the country, and bringing it to this administration. And they have been talking about this, and they've done an extremely good job of doing this. And that is what ultimately has led to this type of bill that we're going to be breaking down. Okay. So I applaud the National Association of Realtors for their advocacy. I think it's a very good move. Quote was by McGann again, says, buying a home remains one of the greatest drivers of generational wealth and long-term financial stability. And our recent national survey shows that 85% of voters still believe homeownership is part of the American dream, McGann says. Now, and I will say this is so true. If you look over the history of housing ownership, you cannot name a better return on wealth than housing and real estate, right? That is where a majority of people gain their wealth from, is the asset itself grows in appreciation. Yes, you have resets, and yes, you have market crashes, but if you hold, you will ride it out, and it still is something tangible, it's still something real, and it's one of the best assets you can have. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always an asset, right? Sometimes that asset is not visualized or felt until you sell it or retire or move on to the next phase of your life. Because currently, if you're living in your house, it's not necessarily an asset per se, because it has expenses and ongoing costs associated to it to keep the house. It's serving a great purpose though, right? It's housing. But when you get ready to retire or sell or change your life circumstances, typically you have a big chunk of equity in your home that then adds wealth to then when you transfer over into a new change of life, you now have that wealth. So that's the argument they're making with that statement, right? Is that last week, NAR issued a targeted call for action urging members of Congress to support this legislation. NAR also sent a letter to Speaker Mike Johnson and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries urging them to support this measure. Now, this bill is doing exactly that, addressing the housing supply shortage. That is one of the main purposes behind what this bill is talking about, okay? And this is what it talks about. It says the bill targets one of the most persistent challenges facing the housing market, a nationwide shortage of homes. This is what we see across every sector. There's a little bit of a loss in the inventory. And we talked about that yesterday as well in the live stream, showing you some graphs. giving you some intel about what's actually the arc looks like as far as inventory is going and what we're sitting at. Now, it is a national perspective. Everything is local, so your local area might be a little bit different. But nationally, we have an inventory crisis on our hands. We don't have enough homes coming onto the market, and there's a lot of factors. I've talked about that multiple times. We won't labor that here. Well, let's just continue. But there's a lot of factors contributing to that shortage of homes, and this bill is aiming to address as many of those as they possibly can through legislation. Okay. The Housing for the 21st Century Act addresses the housing shortage through a comprehensive approach. Okay, this is where it says helping communities overcome zoning and regulatory barriers, streamlining environmental reviews that delay construction, modernizing legacy federal programs like home investment partnerships and community development block grants, updating outdated manufactured housing rules, and removing duplicative requirements across federal programs. By addressing barriers at every level of government, the legislation will make it faster and cheaper to build new homes. So that's getting to the root of what is a lot of what is inside of this legislation. Okay, that one paragraph is talking about a lot of the things that we're going to find in this. And what we're going to see in this bill is that there is a lot of focus on tax credits, incentives to spur the development of affordable rentals and housing and single family homes. There are key provisions that's talking about including expansion of like the low income housing tax credit, which is, I think is abbreviated LIHTC, I think, to increase unit production. Okay, so, and that's coming down to where they are going to try to make it more tax benefits to builders that build homes in the $100,000 price range. So that will increase, hopefully, that unit production. Now, how will that handle and veg out? Who knows? We'll see. But you got to start somewhere, right? And this is still a good talk. We still need to figure out these type of things. It also aims to reduce a lot of the regulatory barriers that have historically slowed down what new construction needed to do in high demand areas, right? You might have different zoning rules and things like that stopped, builders to come in and be able to build, townhomes, duplexes, or residential housing in certain really dense areas because of old, outdated zoning laws that need to be revisited. You also have all these weird new developments are going on. You have a lot of malls that are now vacant, right? Unfortunately, I kind of like a good mall walking through that. I like the people watch, but that's a whole nother story. But like we do see that these old malls are being converted into housing to some degree, like apartments and being used as a new way for residential housing, and zoning has been getting in the way of that kind of production or of development. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. Now, this bill is moving to the Senate, meaning the actual impact of what we're going to see here and the inventory and all that is still probably months, and it could even be a year or two away before we start seeing this trickling down. But again, I make the whole argument here. I make the whole argument that this is not, you don't make an economic change and expect things to go quick. You do it by looking far ahead and correcting as you go. There's no quick pill here, and you've got to start somewhere. So we can get discouraged and say, well, they should have done this a long time ago. But the reality is they're talking about it now. It's going to take time, and that's okay, right? Now, and the last statement here by McGann says this: as this legislation progresses through Congress, we encourage continued bipartisan collaboration to maintain momentum and bring this bill to the president's desk. Strengthen the path to homeownership for Americans. This legislation takes a comprehensive approach to increasing housing production, modernizing critical federal programs, and strengthening pathways to credit and homeownership, McGann says. So we do know that NAR is going to continually push this and really try to get bipartisan support for it. I encourage every real estate agent out there to do likewise. There's a lot in here. So let me just show you. I downloaded the actual bill, and you can get this link to this article is in the description at the on my YouTube channel. And you'll see the link right here. You can download this, take some time and read through it, right? It is a long document. It's not as long as a lot of bills we've seen. This one here is, I think, 120 pages. So it's lengthy, but it doesn't have a lot of the typical fluff in it that most of these bills have. It's pretty clean. So that's why it's really got a lot of bipartisan support. So we appreciate this, right? Colton Flynn, thanks for being here, buddy. Thanks for stopping in. So, but this is that bill. You can take some time to kind of read this. I encourage you to do it. If you're a real estate agent, please check this article out because it's passed the House of Representatives. It's going to the Senate. If it passes, there are going to be a lot of housing changes coming in regards to development and new construction, as well as tax incentives. So pay attention to this. Let me just briefly kind of pull out just some of the core principles inside of this bill and what they mean in real estate, right? So what we see inside of here, all right, we see one thing in here that's going to streamline the NEPA review, NEPA review process. And this is for like small scale infill housing developments. So there's a lot of regulatory red tape to kind of cut through to be able to allow housing development to take place in certain areas. And it would require a lot of review before it could do that. Before they could start building, they had to go through all kinds of review, zoning. You talk about what's the term I'm looking for, where it's environmental type issues, right? So all the kind of stuff, there's a lot of regulatory efficiency that they're addressing inside this bill to cut through a lot of that red tape. So that's being discussed. They're also implementing like what they call pattern books. And this is a very interesting thing. So if you were to try to build, like, let's say, like a townhome or apartment complex or anything like that, you had to go through all kinds of, ADUs and submitting applications to local governments to get it approved. And they would scrutinize everything about that building. Okay. And there's a lot of things about a building that had to be a certain thing to get to code before they would actually grant you the permit to actually build that unit. And these type of housing, these type of structures typically address the housing supply for the middle income earners. And if you're delaying that being able to come onto the market, you're delaying the housing development overall, right? Because that's a majority of a lot of your buyers. So by having all this red tape, it caused just a major slowdown. Even though the builder would want to build these things, these zoning regulations and all these checks had to just took months to get through. So by that time, a lot of your builders moved on to other projects because they needed to turn and make money, right? So these pattern books, okay, this pattern books is basically pre-reviewed designs. They are designs that are already pre-reviewed. So let's say you like one of the policies inside, if I can remember correctly, is anything below 5 stories. Typically, anything above 3 stories right now would require 2 stairways on both ends of the building. Now they're changing that regulation. This is just one example. They're changing that regulation to say the first 5 stories. Now you do not have to have 2. Now there's certain things you've got to have in place for egress and ingress as regards to that building to still make it, up to fire code. But those pattern books, those pre-reviewed designs that maybe have just 5 stories or less, only 1 stairway, that it gets an automatic approval stamp from the boards that are doing zoning and environmental review. Okay, so there's these pattern books that they're putting up that you can basically, as a builder, go and acquire a pattern book and say, look, I'm building this building, and it just cuts through all that red tape. So that is a great measure in here that's going to really bring in a lot of people, okay, to be able to build. A lot of builders be able to build those type of structures. Won't feel it as much in the rural areas. You're going to feel it more in the bigger cities, right? Because they have more dense, and they're building more townhouses and building higher buildings. So you're going to feel that a little bit more, but still, it's a good move. They're going to also, another one inside of here, like right now, if you talk about manufactured homes, as far as like the chassis requirement, there is a little bit of a weird rule there as far as the way the chassis looks, the way the wheels set on the bottom of the modular home. And that determines if it can be a permanent real estate or not. And then there's a cost factor to get that approved when they're building those manufactured homes. So there's a lot of red tape on that side of things. They have modified that requirement, and they've clarified HUD as the authority for manufactured homes. So now they've streamlined that into HUD to review this. And this change, it doesn't seem that significant, but here's the thing. When it comes to actually manufacturing these homes, that process to get that chassis approved, that it could be a turned into a true residential home, could cost anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 on the manufacturer. So, excuse me, the theory here is by eliminating these requirements and making it easier, you could save a $5,000 to $10,000 purchase price on a manufactured home, therefore increasing that demographic of buying those homes. So that's, again, a small micro change, but it's these micro changes over the whole thing that make a massive change, right? Another thing inside of this bill is we see that the bank public welfare investment cap went from 15 to 20%. So the private sector financing improved. We'll break this down a little bit more. You might not be familiar with what that means. And that's a whole nother topic about how those numbers kind of correlate into the private sector and how it benefits us on the financial side. So, but just know you can read that in this article and you can kind of see this bill and you can kind of see that as well. They are also modernizing USDA rural housing service technology and staff capacity. They're increasing the amount of people that are involved in that. They're increasing the amount of red tape, or decreasing the amount of red tape it takes to go down the USDA rural housing direction for just the infrastructure of those homes, as well as getting loans through that. So that's in here as well. There's also an exemption in there for veterans, and in more specifically in regards to the disability payments from income calculations for CDBG eligibility. This is CDBG eligibility. Yeah, they have a lot of other things in there where it doesn't cross over. It keeps it within the category so that veterans don't get eliminated out of this being a possibility for them to get the housing, right? So again, got to go a little deeper in that a little bit later, but that's also in this bill. They are establishing a HUD helpline for residents to access eviction-related counseling and resources. Now, this seems like a minor change, but most people do not realize that when they're getting close to being evicted, they might be able to fix their own problem and not get evicted and then have another problem in the housing sector or homeless, right? And so they have created a HUD helpline to talk people through and give them counseling and even resources and sometimes even support to help keep them from getting evicted. So that is happening. There is also a proposed FHA pilot program to expand access to mortgages under $100,000. So we go back to all the incentives and all that's in this bill, talking about kind of helping builders build, smaller homes, cheaper homes, and giving them tax breaks and incentives to do so. They are also proposing an FHA pilot program that expands the mortgages being offered to those that qualify for those homes. So they're addressing two sectors there. And this should help, and this should spur on more construction being done in the lower price tiers. And we really need that. And again, this goes back to that whole inventory issue that we've had for a long time, right? This is beginning to address that. Again, it's not going to be a quick fix, though. It's just not going to be a quick fix. All right, so there is a ton of stuff inside of this bill. I've only touched on a few of the items, but there is way more going on here. So I encourage you, and let me share this again. This is the bill. This is the bill, 120 pages. If you're just joining, we're talking about the bipartisan housing bill that passed the House of Representatives. This link is in the YouTube description of my channel. And you can download the link right here. It says the PDF, and you can get to this document. You can obviously go to the House of Representatives website and download it from there. It was just recently passed, so you can get that. Take some time this weekend, read through this, be familiar. It's not law right now. It's still got to go to the Senate and pass that. So I wouldn't, go around promoting this too much, but we need to have this conversation, because if this passes, and to be honest, I feel like it's going to pass. Again, the overwhelming bipartisan support of this bill, there's nothing really in here that causes anything to go too crazy too much. It's just enough to address almost every single sector and make a change. So I applaud the bill. I think it's really well thought out. I think it's addressing a lot of categories. I think it's fair to all sides of the aisle. And I appreciate and I applaud the National Association of Realtors for the work that they have done in advocating for this bill. I think it's all very, very good. I think it's just overall a really good thing. Now, I will say there are a couple things inside of this that I would say there are some action items that I would encourage you to do as real estate agents with your clients. Because we do know this. We do know that the media will take headlines and they'll run with it. We know that you're going to have some headlines that are neutral and just deliver the facts. We also have other ones that's going to be running with many other versions of the facts, right? So what we do, and that's why I'm encouraging you to download this bill, read through it, agree or disagree with it, but read through it and understand it, research it out, be good at your job, use wisdom, logic, and reason to come to the conclusions about what this bill is actually doing, and then be the professional for your clients, right? You do know that they're going to be coming to you asking questions about this at some point as it kind of circles around the news cycles, right? What you do need, what you want to make sure you're doing is explaining that this policy that we're seeing here that is driven by government is more of a wait and see for buyers and even sellers right now, and even builders. We don't know all of the ramifications of what this will do. It looks promising. It looks very promising, but we don't know exactly where it will land. So if you're having conversation with your clients, do encourage them. It's more of a wait and see. It's a slow process, but here's what's going on. So be educated about what's going on. And then I would encourage you to connect with your local developments, talk about zoning, talk about what's going on there, be engaged on the local level, even the state level. If you are a realtor, I encourage you to be highly active in RPAC and knowing what they are pushing for and going through, and be active in that. So I would encourage you to do those things, right? I would absolutely encourage that. All right. That is the breakdown of that one for now. There's more to come on this bill. This is more or less just a moment of time here to kind of throw it out there in this group so we can discuss it going forward. So there we go. All right, now let's jump over to our second news article. This one here is basically Friedman, and this is talking about free market scores an early victory over PLNs. Now, if you don't know what that is, this is private listing networks. PLNs is private listing networks. Free market is considered, well, the listings we have as real estate agents are for the free market, open to everybody to see, and we market it, everywhere we go, right? So think like portals like Zillow and things like that, Redfin and Trulia and all those websites, right? And Realtor.com, where our listings as real estate agents are syndicated out to everybody out there, and everybody gets a chance to see it. Okay, that's what's being termed as the free market. All right, the PLNs, the private listing networks, is brokerages coming together, or one specific brokerage coming together, pulling their listings and allowing just internally in that brokerage marketing of that property before it goes on the market. I've got many. I had a whole video, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, where I broke down the whole idea about what's called whisper listings or private listings or private listing networks, as well as the free market. There are arguments on both sides of this coin. To be honest, I navigate the market that is given to me. In regards to these type of things, I might have an opinion and a certain way to do this. And I think there's a valid argument on both sides of the aisle here. But the reality is, whatever ends up happening, I'm gonna be paying attention, and then I'm gonna navigate it the best way I can for my clients. My concern is on my clients, not necessarily me. So what is best for my clients? So what we're gonna do today on this article, though, this is by Inman. It's an opinion piece by Bess Friedman. Excuse me. And we are just going to kind of briefly talk about what this article is talking about. We're not going to necessarily I'm not going to give you necessarily my opinion the whole time, but I might insert it every once in a while. I have a hard time not doing that. So here we go. This is by Inman.com. Friedman, which is the, oh, hold on. Oh, goodness. Give me a second. I got to log in. This is what happens when you're live. There we go. That's also what makes live so fun. Okay, this is free market scores an early victory over PLNs. Brown Harris Stevens, CEO, Bess Friedman, looks at Zillow's early win in its fight with Compass and its implications for the future of PLNs. Let me get a little backstage here. Compass is the main opponent against Zillow in regards to the free market versus private listing networks. Compass has the position that you to be able to help your consumer in the way the consumer wants to be helped, they should have the right to private listings. They should have the right to keep their home from being mass marketed everywhere. All right. And they are pushing for that the consumer that does not want their house, maybe for privacy concerns or whatever it may be, they don't want their house pushed out. Those consumers should not be penalized by not sending it all out. Zillow's position is you should always send it out. You're hurting all consumers by doing this, and we don't want you doing that. We want that data. Okay. Now, what we have to pay attention to this is neither side of the aisle is altruistic. Both have a win where this lands, right? One can benefit one way, one can benefit the other. So it's not like both parties are just out for the consumer the most. There is a business here that's being ran. Zillow's running a business, Compass is running a business. But in the nuances of what this is, both sides have an argument. So I'm all fine with letting the courts and everybody else fight this out, waiting for regulation to pass on how and what we can do, paying attention, voicing our opinions when it's necessary, absolutely, and providing advice. I love civil discourse. I think that's what makes our country just so great, is when we can come together and talk through issues like this without being emotional about it, talk and get down to the facts. I think that's healthy. So on this topic, though, regardless where it lands, I'm going to help my agents navigate it. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. All right. It says private listings networks just suffered a major setback, at least for now, which is good news for buyers and sellers over the country, all over the country. Again, this is opinion piece. So this person's on the side of that this is a good win. Others will be on the other side and say, is this really a good win, right? It says Friday's federal court ruling denying the preliminary injunction to block Zillow's listing access standards just reinforced what I believe is the ethos of our entire industry. Transparency and broad market exposure serve consumers, agents, and markets alike. Again, you can unpack this. This is her opinion. This is her side. This is what she believes. Now, there's a whole another argument that says, well, yeah, but what about the consumer that doesn't want their house marketed everywhere? And maybe they're a high profile client, like a celebrity or something, doesn't want their house all over the internet. Maybe they are, have an issue. They're going through a family situation where it's not safe for them to market their property. These are all the arguments on the other side. All right. The court's decision makes clear that there was a lack of evidence proving that Zillow's policy harms competition or unlawfully excludes rivals. In particular, the ruling notes that sellers and brokerages remain free to use alternative marketing strategies, even if those listings forgo exposure on Zillow. So this kind of came out like not too long, a few months ago, where basically when this was happening, we were holding properties off the market. Zillow came out with a statement saying, if you do that, that property can never be on our site marketed. If you hold that privately, we're going to penalize you and not let you market your home on our site at all, right? If that's what you choose to do. So there's a little bit of a pushback there, and I need to get in the weeds a little bit more about where this has landed, but I don't like that. I think there's an element. This is where my opinion is going to come in. I'm sorry, I got inserted. Is I still think that there needs to be the choice for the consumer. There needs to be a scenario where the consumer is not penalized because they needed privacy, but yet they still need to move a property. There are scenarios. There are legitimate scenarios where that is the case, right? So I think there's an element here where we got to be a little careful. As I said all along, it's up to the agents to now educate their sellers about what it means to enter into a private listing network. What are the trade-offs? What is gained and what is lost? These are important themes that agents as fiduciaries should be explaining in great detail to their clients, and this court ruling has now all but ensured these fundamental discussions must take place. Now look, let's pause there. I actually do agree with that for sure. Okay. I still am on the side, and for the most part, almost in every case, that the more exposure you get on a property, the better it is for the consumer. I think a good agent is going to go into a listing appointment and explain both sides, but then really be very honest with them and explain to them the benefits of putting their home on the market for all to see, right? I do still think that open market, the free market, is truly where the consumer does win the most. I still also hold back and say that there is a reason that some won't do that. But making sure that it's not a decision dictated by the real estate agent and by the consumer is a good move. Now, it goes on. I want to be clear that private listings are very different from a private listing network. And this is true. This is true. Private listings or whisper listings, that's a new term that I've just recently been hearing a lot of lately, have always been around, and Brown Harris Stevens handles them quite successfully. When a seller truly wants to keep their sale private for compelling reasons, we help them, as we always have. We make phone calls. We shop the property around discreetly. We don't drag it into our marketing arsenal and tout that it's one of thousands of private listings you won't see anywhere else. That's a strategy to help the brokerage grow inventory, but it does very little to help sellers. In fact, studies show that sellers actually lose money when they circumnavigate the open market. So this is where there's, again, a little bit of a point of tension in this whole argument. Is on the face, when you read a statement like that, you're like, oh yeah, I agree. That makes perfect sense, right? Well, here's also the argument, the counter argument to that the private listing networks were saying. She kind of characterized them and kind of created a little bit of a straw man, where she's talking about how it's more beneficial for the brokerage to have this private listing network and it doesn't go out everywhere. It's just internally and they're marketing between themselves and with the other 1,000 private listings things, whatever. But there is a strategy here too, that a time inside of a private listing networks gives the seller a way to test the market. It gives them the ability to take some time to see what a smaller group responds to the price. Not every seller is needing to sell their property ASAP. Some sellers want to test the market. Some of them want to see if the remodel, or if they need remodels or landscaping or pricing or whatever it is they need to do to the property, there are strategic maneuvering that could take place in a private listing network that is not otherwise afforded to the seller when it's pushed out everywhere. Sometimes a seller might benefit from keeping their house off the market and allowing that to kind of percolate a little bit in a smaller group to get responses and feedback before they go out everywhere. And that's the counter argument. That's what private listing networks are arguing for. It's like there is a testing phase. Like, I mean, almost every industry does this, right? If you think about the technology arena, right? They have beta testing. So if you create a new product, you will find your beta testers. They will be, either you give them the software for free or whatever. They get a limited amount of time to check out this new software. They test it out for a little bit of time and they provide feedback on that product before it goes out everywhere. You think about opening a restaurant, right? What do? Well, they open up for a small, limited group. They have a private dinner and private lunches and things like that to test what? Their systems and processes. Like, does this work? Does this make sense? So the counter argument to that statement is that logic. It's the logic behind how do we best position a property to be ready for the masses. So there is a strategy in this. Okay, there is a strategy in this. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily the best strategy, but there is a strategy for certain sellers that this makes sense, right? All right, this federal ruling marks an early procedural win for Zillow, but the broader lawsuit continues. An open, transparent market is necessary to foster trust inside and outside of this industry. Our job as real estate agents to be a constant source of truth and trust to our consumers, which is why this is so fundamental to our survival. It's a battle we cannot afford to lose. Look, I understand the heart and the zeal behind this, but they're inside of that statement. I just, it's not like we had this battle that if this doesn't go the one way or the other, that either A, the real estate agent is obsolete, or B, the real estate market can't be fair and equal. And that's just a little too extreme in my opinion. I think to be honest, I don't think any real estate agent out there that makes their money from more transactions. Okay. The only way a real estate agent makes money is by closing properties. To take the position that if you go one way or the other, it's going to just crash everything, negates the whole way that the industry works, because an agent is always going to advise, or at least they should. I mean, logically, now you might have bad agents that don't understand how to do certain things. That's fine. You have that regardless of what kind of policies are out there. But to make the argument that things are just going to fall apart because you go one way or the other way here negates the whole idea that a real estate agent only makes money when they move property. They have to close property. So they're going to do what they need to do to sell more property. That's what they're going to do, right? So I think wherever this lands, I think, real estate agents are going to navigate it just fine. We're not going to, it's not the end of the world at all. I just don't think it's that big of an argument. I don't think this is a big deal. I think there's arguments on both sides. I just wouldn't go that extreme. So anyway, that's my soapbox. I think it's kind of a little bit too much hyperbole in there. All right. So what's some action items inside of this? Well, look, I would be paying attention. I would be observing what this is being talked about, right? I would ensure your listing process does emphasize the benefits of exposure over, you call it whisper listings or whatever, something taken off the market for a little while. I would create in my listing presentations or my dialogue a way to explain the risk and pros of both. Right now, we can kind of do both. It's a little bit of a gray area right now. Understand your local association and your state laws and regulations to navigate how this works, though. Don't just read an article and then start doing what it says. Go local, find out what the rules are in your association and in your state, and that's what you are allowed to do. So do those things, regardless of what kind of news and media it says. Don't fall into the trap that you can do all these type of things that they say here. They could be operating from one perspective in their state and their association, not as a whole. So be very mindful of that. But having conversation with your seller that talks about private listings and all that kind of stuff is a good thing. I would definitely do that. I would get in the habit and develop a way to explain to sellers the benefits of off market. What does that mean? And how does that benefit them? And then how does it benefit them to have it mass exposed, right? I would definitely lean into this. And that's where I would say about all you need to do right now, because there's really just not much going on inside of that. All right. So let's see. This brings me, let's see here. I did not load up an article. Give me 1 second. I'm going to get another article here loaded up. Let me know in the comments if you're finding any value in this as I look up this article real quick, guys. I thought I had this open, but forgot to click it. This is more or less a summary of the housing market. There we go. Got it. All right. So this one here, let me zoom in so we can get it in, and I'll share my screen. Okay. This one right here is an article by Yahoo Finance. It's actually by Go Banking Rates, Josephine Nesbitt, Monday, February 9th, 2026. So what's really been reported here is that 2026 is shaping up to be a buyer's year. And I put it in quotes, cautiously say that. I don't let that kind of verbiage kind of fool you, though. The conditions are improving to the buyer side, and there is an advantage there. But truly, the advantage is going to go to the agent who knows how to navigate this situation we find ourselves in, this housing market. I talked about this yesterday, where buyers are more calculated buyers. That's the way they operate. They are more calculated in the way that they do things. They're becoming more aware. They're not buying homes at the list price. They're more aware about the list price and the value, what the market is bringing. Agents are becoming more aware of that. So we still have a home price at a certain amount, buyers trying to meet that. And so now what we're starting to see is like more incentives offered by the sellers to get the buyer to come in and buy their house. We see more days on the market, that kind of stuff. So this article here is titled, "Will the 2026 housing market be better for buyers or sellers?" Here's what real estate agents predict. So we do know the 2025 housing market saw its ups and downs. Mortgage rates fluctuated, inventory increased in some areas, and both buyers and sellers had to adjust their expectations. That's true. A shift, right? We saw a little bit of both sides of the aisle kind of trying to get together here to get the market to be balanced out, right? So that's what we see here. All right. For a better understanding of what's coming next, real estate agents share their take on whether 2026 housing market will favor buyers or sellers. All right. This one right here is opinion by Alex Vidal, president of ERA Real Estate. He says, quote, "We are entering a new real estate market where prices, inventory, and sales level are back to being highly localized. During the pandemic and soon after, we were able to make broad brush statements about dwindling supply, booming buyer interest, and increased prices," Vidal explained. "That is no longer true. In some parts of the nation, prices continue to rise, although at a slower pace." Look, this is very true, okay? If you go back into the pandemic era, you could do this. Go into Google and type in, real estate market in 2020, 2019, 2020. You will notice that no matter if it was local, nationally, or whatever, you could make those broad statements he just said, right? During the pandemic, you could say what? You make broad, dwindling supply, right? Supply and demand was changing. Booming buyer interest, right? They were getting free money and the interest rates were really low, and increased prices. I mean, you could say that, and that would apply to every single market in the nation. Every market in the nation, that statement would apply. It's not the case now. It is not the case. It is 100% local. Different markets, different transients going on, different migrations across states, different job employments. You have to get centrally located in your market to know what's truly going on. You can look at it as a broad spectrum. You can look at that and you can see trends, but you have to be aware of the trends and see how those trends correlate into your local market. So he's making a very, very valid point there. He says, in many markets where home values have decreased, dramatic increases in home insurance premiums have been a contributing factor. Think areas affected by hurricanes, flooding, wind, and fire. And that's vital. He's making another very good point. Is again, if you were to go back the past year, you'll see hurricanes, you'll see tornadoes, you see flooding, fire. All of these things have affected each one of those different markets differently. And even though maybe housing has changed, or maybe there's inflation still going on, or maybe there's a decrease in home values, whatever it may be in your market, the reality is he's making a very good point that the cost of buying a house is even more expensive when you factor in the insurance premiums in those areas affected by weather or, major issues like this, right? Because now insurance premiums go up to buy in those areas. So again, this is, to his point, being localized. It's a very good point. Decline in home values can also be attributed to rising inventory and new home developments, right? With ample inventory, competition for homes is less and fewer bidding wars are keeping prices from dramatically increasing. I would agree. Most communities have not seen such a balanced market in several years. We do see this overall. If you see a trend, you see a more of a balanced market. We don't see anything going one way or the other too much. We also should expect home prices to have slight variation in appreciation levels next year, depending on the market. So we'll see that. All right, now another quote here. This is by Neil Brooks, a realtor with more than 25 years of experience and president of the New Day USA Admiral Agent Division. 2026 housing market predictions for buyers. Quote, in 2026, the housing market is expected to be more favorable for buyers. All right, this shift is primarily due to the anticipated easing of mortgage rates, which will make it easier for buyers to secure loans. That's true, right? As interest rates go down, even the buyer confidence increases. So when that takes place, people are more apt to buy homes. So that's true, right? That's just the basic necessities or the basic thought pattern behind mortgage rates. When that goes down, people spur and they want to buy. So that is actually happening. According to Brooks, buyers may hold more negotiating power in terms of concessions such as closing cost contributions, home warranties, and interest rate buydowns. I'm going to pause here for just a second. I talked about this yesterday too, is you can right now, and this is the part I don't like about shorts and even short little videos, is you lose context in a lot of conversations, and especially when it comes to, deep economic discussions, okay? And what they just said there is true. Like in one breath, I could say it is cheaper to buy a house now than it ever has been, okay? And if I say that in a short video, you could take that and run with that in many different ways. But if I was in a long form video and I said, it is cheaper now to buy homes than ever because the amount of money you have to bring to table by taking up a lot of your liquid assets has decreased. That's a very different statement. Yes, it is cheaper as far as your outgo to actually acquire the house. Is it cheaper as a financial burden to you? Well, not necessarily, right? Prices have increased, insurance premiums have went up. But the amount of out-of-pocket money, your liquid asset, has decreased, right? Because when you're in a buyer's market or more of a buyer's market, homes are sitting on the market longer. What they just said here, there's more concessions offered by the seller, more incentives to get the buyer to buy their home over somebody else's. Competition ramps up. The buyer wins in those scenarios, right? You also have closing cost contributions, home warranties being offered by sellers, so you get a better purchasing experience. You get some home warranty to cover the house. You get interest rate buy downs by builders are starting to do that. So to get the buyer and capture the buyer, the sellers are willing to offer more to get you to buy the house. So then your out of pocket to buy the property goes down. So in one essence, on one side, on the statement, when you go to close a house, it's cheaper, right? Now, that doesn't correlate to the next 30 years if you own the home for 30 years. If you own the home for the 30 years, you might pay a little bit more. You probably will pay a little bit more, given the lower interest rate versus the higher interest rate. But the reality is, though, it plays out where your amount of money that you're taking to the closing table is decreased, okay? Therefore, freeing up more cash to do either improvements to that property to bring the value back up so you gain more equity, or rolling that over into some other kind of investment, okay? So that's the argument, and that's a very good point that they made right there. The current buyers I am working with are seeing sellers who are willing to negotiate the price, terms, and timelines, Rhodes claimed. One of my clients negotiated $12,000 in seller concessions on closing costs. That's unheard of in the 2023 market. 100%. You would not have heard that. Matter of fact, there's so much competition out there, sellers didn't need to offer anything. And most of the time, prices went up. There's a bidding war to buy the property. You had to make yourself look as good as possible on paper to actually win the house. That's what we saw back then. So again, it's reduced the amount of money to take to the table. 2026 housing market predictions for sellers. Quote, sellers may still benefit from market conditions, but they need to be more flexible with their asking prices and terms in order to close deals, as buyers will have more options and bargaining leverage, Brooks explained. Anyway, there is a lot of quotes in here. Well, we're almost through it. Never mind. We're almost through it. I thought we were almost done. Yeah, okay. Let's see. 2026 housing market predictions for sellers. Sellers may still benefit from market conditions, but they may need to be more flexible with their asking prices and terms in order to close deals, as buyers will have more options of bargaining leverage. We do know that's true. Quote, the list it high and see what sticks approach will not work in the market. I just sold a house in a geographic area at real market value, and the sellers did not stretch the list price as we used to. Although it took longer to sell, it closed without major appraisal issues that would have killed the deal thanks to a buyer contingency. Yeah, so look, as agents, you guys need to be aware about what's going on in your market. You got to understand value. You need to invest in time looking at data. It could be boring. You need to know it. You got to know the data. Your job is to sell properties and move properties, and you can't do that if you can't list it correctly based on what the market will bring. You can't do it. You got to know the numbers. You got to get into the data, understand what's going on, and apply that data to your listing when you're having conversations with your sellers. You got to do it. You got to know these things. Last quote here. I sold a home with a seller who spent $8,000 on staging and minor cosmetic updates. The house sold, and their investment was returned 5 times due to a faster sale and a higher sale price, Rhodes stated. A seller down the street who sold an identical home in as-is conditions, which we all know was just a nice way of saying a dump, also lost $20,000 in their price to sell. There's a lot to unpack inside of this article, right? These are great quotes. This is giving you a perspective from the real estate side. They're giving great advice. I applaud each one of them. They each were addressing what the market was doing. They brought actual value back in their statements. Those are agents that understand. They really are. They understand what's going on. Now, what I would say is I would reach out to every single, dead lead that you've had. Reach out to all of them. And especially in the 24 and 25 era, with specific data on what is going on with the inventory in regards to options for them. Go back, because to be honest, a lot of the people you talk to in 24 and 25 might benefit from this type of market, okay? They might not have all the liquid cash they needed to close a house in 2024. They still had to bring a lot of money to the table. Now, a lot of sellers are starting to offer concessions, new built homes. The builders are starting to offer buy downs and concessions. So those are all things that are happening. So go back to your dead leads, reach back out to them and talk to them about the market. That's an action item I would encourage you to do. There is money in your dead lead pool. There's money there. You just got to make the call. You got to make the call. Now, what I would also do is shift your training from winning multiple offers to negotiating those offers. You need skills in figuring out how to negotiate for repairs and concessions and buy downs and credits and grants. You need ways to negotiate in this market for your buyers and your sellers. That whole winning multiple offer thing, how that all looks, that's not what we're going to see in 2026. We could, but I doubt it. We're going to see just the home sitting on the market a little bit longer, inventory slightly increasing, buyer pool slightly increasing, and then more of a balanced market coming into view. Okay, we got to be good at negotiating. This is a time where we start doing our jobs as far as negotiators are concerned, right? All right, that's the take home. I got one more article to talk about, guys, and we'll wrap up this live stream. I've got to get to work. I've got a busy day today. Oh boy. All right. This is by RIS Media. This is 12 ways AI falls woefully short for real estate professionals. Woefully short. And its title, it says, brokers and agents testify about how and why too much reliance on the now globally accepted power of AI can cause problems ranging from loss of client confidence to legal entanglements. That's a lot to unpack there. And I will say, I've seen this over and over and over again, that AI is becoming, the agents are relying on it so much and they're getting so comfortable with it that they are using it without even checking what it says. And they're posting social media posts, they're filling out contracts with it. They're using it to review contracts and missing things. Like, there are certain things that AI can do and there's other things that it cannot do. And we've got to be careful. And this is why I wanted to highlight this article here. All right. So I will start off this before I even share the article. Everyone is telling even myself and my agents that AI is going to replace the real estate agent. Today, we're going to look at why it's falling woefully short of ever being able to do that. All right. We do know technology can absolutely draft a description. Okay. It can build, relationships in regards to drip campaigns, but it can't connect and navigate complex emotional development of that relationship. Okay. That's where we come in. It can't be your feet and your legs going into properties, listening and communicating. It cannot help the emotional climax that happens at a closing table. It can't address those things. It can do a lot, but it cannot do those things. Our jobs are not going to be replaced with AI if we understand our true value to our consumer. If you're an agent that doesn't do the things that builds relationship with the people you work with, then you will be eliminated by AI because you'll be reliant on AI for everything, and therefore AI will eliminate you. So that's the logic behind that, right? We're talking about EQ, right? AI lacks EQ, emotional intelligence. It doesn't have it, right? It can't calm a nervous first-time buyer. It can't negotiate all these nuanced terms in the circumstances of somebody's life as you're sitting there talking with them, right? There's also this growing trend of AI fatigue where if you go onto YouTube or TikTok and it's all this AI stuff, and that fatigue is a real thing that consumers don't want to see all the time. They're going to begin to crave human connection over automated responses. They're going to be craving that more and more in this era that we find ourselves in. And this article that we're going to talk about, it's going to highlight that over-reliance on tech leads to a cookie-cutter brand that lacks authority and trust. All right? So let's get into this article. Sailors are waiting rain, aim straight, said Captain Craig. Does that sentence make any sense to you? Me neither. It resulted when AI was provided with text and tasked to create something readable, but was misinterpreted by the app to mean that each word had to include AI. Whoops. The lead sentence is, of course, laughable, but it's certainly no joke if, when AI screws up, costs real estate pros hard-earned commissions, clients, and reputation. AI has certainly established the ability to save agents gobs of time by automating repetitive, time-consuming tasks. AI is great at supporting agents, but terrible at trying to be one. Ooh, what a quote. AI is great at supporting agents, but terrible at trying to be one. Take that one and run with it. Here are 12 things it cannot do, according to top real estate professionals around the country. AI can't read a room, okay? Cannot read a room. It can't go into a room and hear and see what's going on and be able to articulate words to connect with the people in that room. Can't do it. I'm not going to read these in too much detail, guys. I got to wrap up. It says AI can't see inside a house, right? The whole idea that AI can replace us as a whole, that we can't, go out and show houses anymore because AI is going to be able to analyze everything in that house. And oddly enough, I actually had this whole conversation with a consumer, not just recently. Well, eventually AI, you can run a camera through there and it's going to analyze the walls and everything that's going on. Yeah, it can't feel, it can't touch, it can't talk and communicate with the client that's standing in the room about what they're seeing with their own eyes and their experience, right? It can't do that. It can't see inside the house and give perfect analyzation of every nook and cranny of that property. It can't call the listing agent and have a conversation with that agent about what's going on. It can't bring that human element there. It can't do it. AI can't be hyper-local. And it says when it comes to clients, they have to realize, especially in smaller metro areas, that the information isn't as local as they think, as they'd like to think it is. So now this could change a little bit, right? There's more and more data becoming out there, and AI can probably get a little bit more local, but it can't explain the culture of a room. It can't explain the culture of a community. It can't connect with the people. It can't take that person and introduce them. It can't go out to eat with them and connect with them and introduce them to people in the restaurant about the community and help them see it. It can't physically take them on a tour of the neighborhoods and what is going on in those neighborhoods. It can't do that. It can't be the legs and feet of that purchase. It can't do that. AI can't know crucial details, right? It says there are some things that AI consistently gets wrong in real estate, said Monisha Reyna with Coldwell Banker Warburg in New York City. It has yet to accurately determine whether buildings are pre-war or post-war, for instance. In New York City, a building's pre- or post-war status is often a key architectural and style distinction. This is across the board. It can't do that. I mean, in my own local area, our local valuation office assesses and defaults. If it doesn't know the year, it just defaults to the worst, 1969. It defaults to 1969. So it doesn't know the data. It doesn't have all that. It doesn't dig in deep. It only knows what's available to it, right? It can't do all the research. It could get better, and it probably will get better, but it can't bring those nuances to life with a client. AI cannot build trust. It can't build trust. It is a quick, hit of information and data, but they can get that so many different places. People already do. It doesn't build that trust. when you as an agent are going in, answering questions directly and communicating with them and helping them navigate a very difficult transaction through all of the emotion that they are going through that transaction, AI can't do that. It can analyze the data that's available to it, but it can't put the arm around them and support them and walk them through the process, right? It can't do it. AI can't communicate directly, okay? It can't replace the fundamental human connection we share with our clients. You ever notice this too? And we can put this in just an easy way. Now, I understand AI is getting better at this whole video thing, and it probably will continue to get better, but people will forever want communication. They want to see the nuances of your face. They want to see your mistakes. They want to see you stutter. They want to see you mess up. They want to connect with you as a human. The impersonal text that people get all the time will always be that. They want the interaction. They want to see you. They want to connect with you. AI can't do that. It can't do that. AI can't create logical comps. All right. It only has access to data. It doesn't know the wants and desires and the emotional needs of the person. You know that. It can analyze the square feet. It can analyze how the building's set up. It can analyze what that looks like, but it can't create the logical connection between the data to the emotional needs of the client. It can't do that. AI can't lead the path to closings. I mean, if you've been selling this real estate for any length of time, you understand the intricate problems and difficulties of getting two people that have opposing views to come together with you in the middle, negotiating all those little intricate details to get them to the closing table, right? Again, AI will know the data. It can't navigate that emotional, intelligent quadrant there, right? It can't do it. It can't do these things. AI can't perceive emotions. It has no idea the emotion and the state of the person. It can't console. It can't comfort. It can't provide any of those things. It can't advocate. It cannot be an advocate for that person based upon those responses. It can't do that. Excuse me. AI can't predict ahead. It can't run algorithms to figure out, where a city might be moving and what might be going on in that community or what kind of developments might be coming up on the forefront, right? Because you're attending, your local community boards and development boards and getting involved. It can't bring that to the table. It can't talk about the best experience you had at even a laundromat or, a restaurant or what are the best places to go without an agent guiding them throughout the whole transaction. And especially someone moving into a new area. How often are real estate agents the only source and only connection that person has to that community? And how often do we as real estate agents go out and connect with the community with that client and get them involved, show them what the community is about and connect with people, tell them the best restaurants, tell them where to do certain things, tell them where to go do this and buy this and do this, where the contractors are and who's the best and who's not, right? It can't do that. It can read reviews, but people can cheat reviews. And as AI ramps up, you probably have a lot more fake AI reviews, right? Like agents, AI can't give legal financial advice. You'll notice this. It can't do it. It actually defaults to that. It's very careful. It won't let you do that. And AI can't verify the information. How many times do you use AI and it gets so much wrong, right? You're like, that's not what is going on in my community, right? It might get better. It may get better, all right? It probably will get better. But again, can't replace that emotional connection, that emotional EQ, that emotional intelligence that we have as real estate agents. It can't replace. It can't replace that human connection. It just can't do it. Now, what would I do in response to all of that information, right? That was a lot. That was 12 things that AI can't do. Maybe you'll try to do, but can't do. What are some action items I would say to take away that you can do in your job to help grow you as a real estate agent? What would I say? I would double down on video. I talked about this yesterday in yesterday's live stream. Use your face, your voice to provide that human element that AI can't replicate. Okay, your nuances, your mistakes. I mean, I'm sitting here coughing and being human on this live stream, right? It can't replicate that. Be human. Don't be afraid of video. If you want to send a video in response to a text, do it. You're going to build that human connection. Do it. AI can't do that. As all these other agents build chat bots and everything else out there to automate everything, there's a massive opportunity here for the agent to be genuine, a massive opportunity. And I will say the generation that is growing up with technology in their hands and accessible through everything are going to crave that more than they are going to crave anything else. What I would also do is do not negate that face-to-face meetings. Pour more into that in 2026. Set a goal for like every single day, I'm going to get in front of people and connect with them. If it's going out to coffee with a sphere of influence person that's referred you a bunch of business, do it. Rotate them through, right? Stay in front of them and communicating with them. Stay involved in your community, right? Now, I would automate some of my administrative tasks. That's where AI excels. There are certain things that I can use AI to do that helps me grow my business, right? There are many, many things that I can do. There's, helping process contracts to one point to the other, if this, then that's, and all that kind of stuff. But I would definitely stay involved in communicating with my clients and to being face-to-face as much as possible. I really would. All right, guys, I've got to go. I've got meetings I got to get to. It's going to be a busy day. Hopefully you guys have a busy day as well. I hope you got some kind of value out of this live stream. I so enjoy doing this. It's a good challenge for me to come on here and even read through this myself. It helps me stay equipped. I hope it's doing likewise for you. I do appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to come here and listen to me talk about the news and what's going on. I hope it's actually providing value back to you. So that is my goal. If it has, please consider doing the like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff, right? So that is your real estate brief for today. I hope you did find this beneficial. I hope you'll consider joining this community, subscribing, and all those type of things. A bunch of real estate agents that are focused on building a business that is relationship focused first, not driven by AI, but connecting with people first. Man, there is a lot more I could be talking about, but I will see you tomorrow, right here where you're watching, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. Look forward to seeing you then. Take care and have a wonderful, wonderful day.